What's up, everybody? Today I'm going to be doing one of the projects on my 99 Jeep Cherokee XJ. As you can see here, we have the headliner board. It has been stripped and has some repairs done to it. The previous owner, whoever owned it before me, maybe not the last guy, but somebody had put just a black fabric over this and probably used a spray adhesive and then ran about 100 staples into it because it started sagging again. So I'm going to show you a different way, not the right way, not the professional way to do it, just a different way to reupholster your headliner board. And just a word of warning, it's permanent. Not 100% permanent in a way, which I can explain after, but once it's done, it can't be changed. So this is the fabric we'll be using today. It's just a black and white plaid, which I think will look halfway decent against my gray interior. This is 3 yards and 60 inches wide, which should be way more than enough. I think I paid like 25 bucks for it on Amazon. The next item up, we have an epoxy resin kit. This is a 1 gallon kit. I actually got 2 of these, so I have 2 gallons, which I think is overkill, but I do other projects where I use this stuff, so I got it on sale. It's like 30 bucks per kit. Other materials I'll be using in tools, we have a razor blade. We got scissors for cutting off the excess. The razor blade is just for cutting out the holes. Got some paint stirrers for mixing up the epoxy, spreaders for pushing all of the excess out and getting rid of air bubbles and make sure it's nice and smooth. Of course, we're going to have a mixing cup just so we can mix up the epoxy properly, which it's just a 1-to-1. Just a big cheap pitcher here that I bought at a dollar store for probably a couple bucks. That's what I'm going to mix all of the epoxy in, and probably at least half of this at a time. And then of course just some gloves. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're just going to unroll this. So before I even start with epoxy, I'm going to go around with like just a piece of folded tape, and you can see like these little fuzz balls everywhere, and I'm just going to pick them all up just to make sure I don't encase these little fuzz balls in epoxy. All right, I have all of it trimmed up on the sides. I left about 2.5 inches, and I did go around and mark my holes. This is roughly a hole for a speaker, but I only cut a very small X out of it. And the 2 console or overhead console lights, dome lights, we'll call them dome lights, and then of course the sun visor holes. So I'm actually going to start from the middle and work my way forward, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll this forward part, this front half, to the middle, and then roll the back half to the middle. I know a lot of people start in the front with it all rolled up and they spray a little and work their way down, but since we're doing epoxy, I feel like I want to pull everything this way and then pull everything to the back. I don't know how it's going to work out. I've never done this, but I'm hoping for the best. But besides all that, even once it's all laid down and it's on the first layer of epoxy resin that's going to be on the headliner board itself, we're going to saturate it. We're going to go over it with another layer, and I think it should actually kind of smooth out when it's wet and kind of sticky. And one last thing I forgot to mention that I'm using is I'm using a roller and a brush. I don't know if the brush is going to work out. I don't know how thick this stuff's going to be, but I'm hoping it works. So those are 2 other things I'm using for tools besides the spreaders. All right, so I got the first batch of epoxy. Wish me luck. All right, I'm gonna start on the rear portion. Seems to be working pretty well. I mean, this is like sticking it to a bunch of honey. But... All right, so I got the first layer poured and the fabric laid over it. Came out pretty good. There's a couple spots where it's sticking up, but for the most part, it's sitting actually pretty nice in there. I don't really have too much creasing except in the back, which I think I have a solution for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to saturate. My second layer is going to saturate the entire thing. And back here, what I need to do is just make sure I can get all of the creases, all the folds towards the outside, and make sure I saturate it well. And that way there, when it dries, I can cut this right to the edge, because on the sides and the back, it has a piece of trim that covers it, and it will never delaminate from here. I don't think it's ever going to come apart once it's epoxied together anyway. The only edge I have to make sure that looks nice, because there's no trim, is the front edge. So what I'll do is I'll just flip it up and coat both sides, saturate it, and fold it down so that I have a nice crisp edge. Other than that, I think it's actually going to work out pretty nice. Now just keep in mind, it's not going to be a fabric finish to it anymore. It's going to be shiny, which some people won't like, but honestly I think it's going to be fine. It's going to look good. It'll be easy to clean. You just hit it with some Windex and wipe it down. I don't know, we're going to see. I'm going to start doing the second pour now. Well, here we are. It's saturated, and the material I used was kind of a pain to get it to saturate, but it does look like it's going to work out pretty good. I have a couple little creases here and there. The light kind of shows it, but when you look at it overall without a bright light on it, it's laying pretty flat. I did have some areas in the back where I have some folds and creases, but to be honest, I actually kind of like it like that. Once I trim around the edges and it's installed, the rough edge won't be seen anymore. It'll have a pretty clean edge. And when the speakers are in there, it almost look like a couple pillows sitting there. But to me, I think it's going to come out pretty nice. I don't know exactly what the finish is going to look like ultimately. Maybe it'll look like just the way it looks now, or maybe it'll have a matte or a satin finish to it. I'm not really sure. But overall, it wasn't too bad, and I used 3/4 of a gallon. We're going to come back to this in the morning and take a look at it, but this does need 8 to 24 hours to dry, and it's going to be kind of cool tonight, so it may take a little bit longer. But either way, let's cut back to it when it is fully cured. All right, here we are. It's the next morning. It was a little cold last night. It was like 40 degrees, so I was a little concerned about the cure time. But it doesn't look too bad. It's not tacky anymore. It's still a little, it's a little wet. I wouldn't say it's wet. It's like a tiny bit tacky. So it is curing okay. The only spot I see where it pooled is right where the dome light hole is going to be, so that's perfect. It's not going to really have a oddball shiny spot in it because I'm cutting that out. I don't mind how it looks. It actually looks pretty decent. Gonna give it a little bit longer to cure, and then I can trim the sides. All right, so here is the headliner fully cured. I did notice that because the temperatures dropped overnight, I had a little bit of hazing going on. And I did find somewhat of a solution to get rid of it. If you spray a little bit of this alcohol on one of the spots that is a little hazed over, give it a nice coat, and this won't make it shiny. It'll still stay like a matte finish. When that dries, it'll be a little darker. It won't have like that cloudiness. There's some areas that got a little extra cloudy that even when I wipe it down, it helps it a little bit, but not that much. But I'd say overall, this sort of experiment project came out the way I wanted it to come out. So the next step is to trim off any excess on the sides that might be hanging, and the rear, the front edge, because I tucked it up while it was still wet and tacky. I have a nice edge. So after trimming it, we're gonna throw it in the Jeep. All right, well, here's the finished product. It's looking great. I have a couple shiny spots here and there, and I have some learning experience recommendations if you want to do this project for any vehicle. So the number one thing I'll say is, if you want a nice uniform satin / matte finish and you don't want little shiny spots, make sure you squeegee your saturation layer really, really well. The more you squeegee out the excess, the less it's going to pool and the less you're going to have any kind of shiny spots. It doesn't really bother me because, to be honest, the dome light, when it comes on, you can kind of see it a little bit, but for the most part, this is what you're going to see when you look in the Jeep, because it's never really going to have any kind of direct sunlight on it or anything because it's a headliner. The other big thing about this is you want to make sure that you mark all of your holes for all of the pieces. Like for my visors, I needed a hole for the retainer pin and for the 3 screws. And then of course there's some pieces that are lined up in here that also have screws. Another big thing with this that's a big plus is that it is now waterproof, and it's a hard headliner. So when I was installing it, is it a little thicker? Yes. Is it a little more difficult to handle because it's thicker? Yeah, I'll say it's a little more difficult, but the other thing is I can push this thing wherever I want it to go and not have to worry about destroying it. So, and of course, it's also now waterproof. It's easily cleaned. It will not absorb odors. And the number one thing, at least for the XJ guys, is it's never gonna sag again. So yeah, an epoxied headliner, it's pretty cool. But just remember, if you want to do this, make sure you pick a pattern or some kind of style cloth or fabric or whatever you're going to epoxy to it. Make sure that you like it and can live with it for a long time, because remember, this is permanent, and the only way you can ever change this is by putting another layer over it. Hope you guys enjoyed.